It all started on a Friday evening, one of those rare nights when the weight of the world seemed to lift just slightly. Work had been hectic for months, and my wife, Jess, had been behaving differently lately. Her smiles, which once felt warm and genuine, seemed forced. Her kisses felt like they were part of some routine, void of passion. Something was wrong, but I hadn't figured it out just yet. That night, she came home later than usual. The excuse was typical. Something about a late meeting with a client. She worked in sales, so her hours could be unpredictable, but still, I couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. She wore a black dress, the one she usually reserved for special occasions, yet her explanation didn't fit the attire. As she slipped off her heels, I noticed a faint smile lingering on her lips, like a secret she wasn't ready to share. "How was your day?" she asked nonchalantly, heading straight for the shower. The conversation felt hollow, like an afterthought. It wasn't until later that night, when she fell asleep beside me, that I began piecing things together. I was always the overthinker, the one who couldn't let things go easily. And tonight, her sudden shift in mood, her coldness in our bed, it gnawed at me. I lay there, staring at the ceiling, questioning everything. Was I just being paranoid? Was this just a phase in our marriage? We'd been struggling financially for a while now, and I'd always chalked her distance up to the stress of our situation. We weren't living in luxury, far from it. Bills piled up, and my paycheck barely covered the essentials. Jess had been increasingly frustrated about our situation, often dropping hints about wanting a better life, more money, more everything. As the night stretched on, I decided I couldn't ignore my gut any longer. I needed answers. I needed to know if it was all in my head or if there was something more. The next day, I made a decision I never thought I would. I followed her. She had another client meeting, and after she left, I grabbed my keys and drove a safe distance behind her car. My heart pounded in my chest as I tailed her, trying to make sense of what I was doing. Was I really spying on my wife? What if I was wrong? What if this was just me being insecure? But the nagging feeling in my gut refused to be silenced. She took a turn into a part of town I hadn't expected. A more upscale area, with restaurants and boutiques we could never afford. She parked outside a sleek black building, the kind of place where people sipped expensive cocktails and laughed without a care in the world. I watched from my car as she stepped out, her dress hugging her figure in a way that stirred something deep inside me, a mixture of desire and betrayal. She walked confidently towards the entrance, glancing at her phone before heading inside. My chest tightened. What the hell was she doing here? I waited for a few minutes, my mind racing. Then, curiosity got the better of me, and I stepped out of the car, making sure to keep my distance. I slipped inside, careful not to be noticed. The place was dimly lit, and the scent of expensive perfume filled the air. I scanned the room, and there she was, sitting at a table with a man I didn't recognize. He was tall, well-built, with dark skin and an aura of confidence that made my stomach churn. They were laughing, leaning in close, their conversation lost in the murmur of the crowd. She touched his arm, a playful gesture that made my blood run cold. I couldn't believe what I was seeing. This wasn't just a business meeting. There was something between them, something intimate. I felt the floor drop from under me, the realization slowly sinking in. She was cheating. I stayed hidden, watching as they talked, my mind a storm of rage, confusion, and heartbreak. How could she do this? After everything we'd been through, the struggles, the late-night conversations about our future, was it all a lie? The man reached for her hand across the table, and she didn't pull away. Instead, she smiled, the kind of smile she used to give me. The kind that made me feel like I was the only man in the world. I couldn't watch anymore. I slipped out of the restaurant, my heart pounding in my chest, my mind racing with 1,000 thoughts. My body felt heavy as I got back into my car and drove away. The image of them together burned into my mind. I didn't know what to do. I didn't know how to confront her or if I even wanted to. All I knew was that everything I thought I knew about my marriage, about her, was a lie. And that was just the beginning. I spent the rest of that weekend in a fog. Every glance at Jess felt like a knife twisting deeper into my gut, but I kept it hidden, waiting for the right moment. She carried on as if nothing had changed, her laughter filling the house in the same way it always had. But it was all a facade now, a mask to cover her betrayal. By Monday morning, I couldn't bear it any longer. The memory of her with that man, his hand on hers, the way she looked at him, was like poison running through my veins. I needed answers, and I needed them now. That evening, while Jess was in the shower, I grabbed her phone from the kitchen counter. My hands trembled as I unlocked it, praying that I wouldn't find anything, that I'd been wrong somehow. But deep down, I knew the truth. I navigated to her messages, and there it was, a string of texts from a number I didn't recognize, no name attached. My heart raced as I scrolled through the conversation. Their words were casual at first, but then I hit the parts that made my stomach lurch. Last night was amazing. I can't wait to see you again. You're everything I've been missing. When can we get away, just the two of us? I slammed the phone down on the counter, feeling the heat rise in my chest. I wanted to scream, to punch something, but instead, I forced myself to breathe. I needed more than just texts. I needed undeniable proof. Over the next week, I began tracking her movements, quietly slipping into the role of detective. Every time she had a late meeting, or girls' night, I followed her, always keeping a safe distance. It became a routine, her lies, my silent pursuit. Each time, it was the same. She'd meet him, they'd laugh, flirt, and then disappear together. But I wasn't ready to confront her. Not yet. I needed something concrete, something that would make it impossible for her to deny what she'd been doing. That's when I started going through her things. It felt wrong, violating her privacy like this, but I didn't care anymore. She had betrayed me first. While she was at work one day, I tore through the house, searching for anything that would give me more answers. I opened drawers, checked the pockets of her coats, and dug through her closet. That's when I found it, the flash drive. It was tucked away in a shoebox, hidden under a pile of clothes she rarely wore. My hand shook as I held it, wondering if this was the moment that would change everything. I knew I should wait until she was out of the house again before checking it, but I couldn't. With shaky fingers, I plugged the flash drive into my laptop and waited for the files to load. When they did, my heart nearly stopped. Videos. Each one labeled with dates that coincided with the nights she'd claimed to be out with clients or friends. The file names were vague enough, just strings of numbers, but I knew exactly what they were. I clicked on the first video, my heart pounding so loudly I thought it might burst from my chest. The screen flickered to life, and there she was, my wife, naked, sprawled out on a hotel bed. And there he was, the man I'd seen her with, hovering over her. They kissed, and within seconds, the video became a blur of limbs and skin, their bodies moving together in a way that made me sick to my stomach. I couldn't watch. I slammed the laptop shut and threw myself back in the chair, my hands trembling uncontrollably. It felt like the air had been sucked out of the room. My mind raced, torn between anger, disgust, and heartbreak. She had filmed it. She had filmed herself with him, over and over again, like it was some kind of sick trophy. I was lost. Everything I thought I knew about her, about us, had shattered in that moment. How long had this been going on? And how could she look me in the eyes, kiss me, sleep next to me, knowing she was doing this behind my back? My stomach turned at the memory of the video, and I felt bile rise in my throat. I barely made it to the bathroom in time, collapsing over the toilet as I emptied what little was in my stomach. The betrayal was more than I could handle. When I finally pulled myself together, I sat back down at the laptop. There was more. I could see the folder held at least a dozen more videos. My hands hovered over the keys, torn between the need to know and the fear of what else I might find. I opened another video. This time, they were in the back seat of a car, parked somewhere that looked secluded. The camera angle was shaky, but it was clear enough to see Jess as she moaned, lost in the moment. Her face, her expression, it was like nothing I'd ever seen from her. There was passion, raw lust, the kind she had never shown me in our years together. I watched in horror as he moved over her, his body dominating hers. And then, in a moment that seared itself into my brain, I heard her say it. "I love your big cock. I've never had anything like it before." I slammed the laptop shut again, this time harder. My knuckles whitened as I gripped the edge of the desk, trying to keep myself from falling apart. I couldn't believe what I had just heard. This wasn't just cheating. This was something else entirely. She wasn't just looking for comfort or attention. She was chasing something I could never give her. Something she had decided I wasn't enough for. It wasn't just the videos or the lies, but the reason behind them that crushed me the most. She wanted luxury. She wanted a man who could give her the things I couldn't, both physically and financially. The tall, dark man in the videos was everything I wasn't. Wealthy from the looks of it. And most painfully, the thing I could never compete with, his size. I had always been self-conscious about that. We hadn't talked about it much, but I knew. I knew I wasn't what some might call well-endowed. Jess had never made me feel inadequate, but now I wondered if that was all a lie too. And it wasn't just about the money. Sure, we were struggling, but I thought we were a team, that we'd get through it together. But now I realized that wasn't enough for her. Crave more excitement, more luxury, or of him. I didn't know how to face her after this. But one thing was certain, I had to. For the next few days, I was a walking shell of myself, going through the motions but feeling detached from reality. Every time Jess spoke to me, every time she kissed me or touched my hand, it was like a slap in the face. I couldn't look at her without hearing the words she'd whispered to him, without seeing those disgusting videos play on a loop in my mind. I thought about confronting her right away, but every time I tried, my throat would close up, and the words would die before I could speak them. How do you start a conversation like that? Hey, I saw the videos of you screwing another man, so let's talk. I needed more than just rage to face her. I needed clarity, a plan. I had to confront her, but on my terms. I didn't want her to spin this into some sob story about how she was lost, or how it was just sex, and didn't mean anything. She couldn't possibly explain away what I'd seen. Not when I knew exactly why she had betrayed me. The flash drive was my proof. It was the knife I'd twist when the time came. But there was something else gnawing at me. Why had she kept it? Why hide it in our house, in the same space we shared? It was as if she wanted to get caught, or maybe she was just careless. Either way, I wasn't going to let her walk away from this unscathed. The opportunity to confront her came sooner than I expected. It was a Thursday night, and Jess had just returned from dinner with a client. I knew better now, of course. I had followed her earlier, seen her meet up with him again, watched them exchange kisses in the parking lot before heading to another hotel. But tonight, something felt different. I wasn't filled with the same rage. I was calm, too calm even. As she walked through the door, I watched her. She had a new handbag slung over her shoulder, a designer brand that I knew we couldn't afford. She smiled at me, that same fake smile that used to make me melt but now only made me sick. "Hey babe," she said, dropping her bag by the door and kicking off her shoes. "How was your day?" I clenched my jaw but kept my voice steady. "Same as always. Yours?" She shrugged casually. "Busy, you know. Meetings, clients, the usual." The usual. The words stung in my ears. My mind flashed back to the hotel, to the man undressing her, to the way she moaned his name. I couldn't wait any longer. "Jess," I said, my voice firmer than I expected, "we need to talk." She stopped mid-step, her expression faltering for a split second before she plastered on that same nonchalant mask. "About what?" "About us. About your meetings lately." I stood up, trying to keep my body from shaking with the adrenaline pumping through me. "Sit down." Her brow furrowed slightly, but she did as I asked, sinking into the couch across from me. There was a tension in the air, a sudden seriousness that she couldn't ignore. "I've been thinking a lot lately," I began, carefully choosing my words. "About how distant you've been. About the late nights. The fancy clothes. And honestly, I'm tired of pretending like I don't see what's going on." Her eyes widened slightly, but she said nothing. I wasn't giving her any room to deny it. "Who is he?" I asked bluntly. "The guy you've been seeing behind my back. The one you've been sneaking off to hotels with. The one you've been filming with." Her face paled, and for a moment, I saw the fear flicker in her eyes. But then, just as quickly, it was gone. She sat up straighter, folding her arms across her chest as though she was preparing to fight back. "What are you talking about?" she said, feigning confusion. I felt a surge of anger rise in my chest, but I kept it in check. "Don't lie to me, Jess. I've seen the videos. The words hung in the air like a bomb waiting to go off. Her mouth opened slightly, and I watched as the color drained from her face. For the first time, she was speechless. I found your flash drive, I continued, my voice colder now. I saw everything. You with him. The hotels. The things you said to him. She was frozen, her eyes wide with shock. I could see the wheels turning in her head as she tried to figure out how to respond, but there was no denying it now. You've been screwing him for God knows how long, I said, standing up and pacing the room. And I want to know why. Why betray me like this? She finally spoke, her voice trembling slightly. I didn't mean for it to happen, she stammered. It's not what you think. It was just. Just what? I snapped, cutting her off. Just sex? Just something you did for fun? Or was it more than that? She was silent again, staring at me with those wide, pleading eyes, but I wasn't going to let her off that easily. I need to know why, Jess. Why throw away everything we had for some guy who, I choked on my words, the memory of her moaning about his size still fresh in my mind. Who isn't me? Her lip quivered, and for a moment, I thought she might break down. But instead, she took a deep breath and looked at me with a resolve I hadn't expected. Because I wanted more, she said, her voice barely above a whisper. I stared at her, my chest tightening. More? What the hell does that mean? She hesitated, then stood up to face me. We've been struggling for years, Tom. The bills, the stress, everything. And I've been trying to be supportive, I really have. But I'm tired. I'm tired of living paycheck to paycheck, tired of not having enough. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. So what? You found some rich guy to screw so you could feel better about yourself? It wasn't just about the money, she snapped, her voice rising. It was everything. You don't get it, Tom. I needed something else. Something more than just this. I felt my fists clenching at my sides, trying to keep myself from exploding. More what? More excitement? More luxury? Her eyes filled with tears, but she didn't look away. More passion. More satisfaction. I felt like I'd been punched in the gut. She didn't have to say it, but I knew exactly what she meant. This wasn't just about money or luxury. It was about him. About what he could give her that I couldn't. It wasn't just about him being rich, Tom, she said, her voice soft now. It was about how he made me feel. The way this satisfied me. The words hit me like a freight train. I stumbled back, shaking my head in disbelief. I wanted to scream, to yell at her, but I couldn't. The weight of her betrayal had crushed me. All this time, she hadn't just been looking for money. She had been looking for something I could never give her. And now, I had to decide what to do with that truth. I stood there, her words echoing in my mind like the final, cruel blow after a long, drawn-out beating. It was about how he satisfied me. That phrase replayed over and over, hitting me harder each time, until the weight of it crushed the last shred of composure I had left. Every breath felt shallow, the room closing in on me as I tried to make sense of the betrayal. It wasn't just about her sneaking around, it was about everything I feared most. My inadequacy, my failures, my inability to give her what she wanted, what she craved. She just stood there, arms crossed, as if she was waiting for me to respond. She had no idea the rage boiling inside me. No idea that each word she spoke was like a knife, carving away the man I thought I was. How dare you? I finally growled, my voice trembling. How dare you throw everything we had away for this? Jess didn't flinch. Instead, she looked at me with this calm, almost indifferent expression, like she'd made peace with her decision long ago. I didn't throw anything away, Tom, she said, her voice steady. It's you who did that. You've been throwing it away for years. That was it. I snapped. Before I could stop myself, I lunged at her, grabbing her by the arms and shaking her. You selfish, lying bitch. I shouted, my voice raw with anger. After everything I've done for you, after everything we've been through, this is how you repay me? By screwing some rich asshole behind my back. Her eyes widened in shock, but only for a moment. Then, as if something inside her had broken too, she pushed back, hard. Get your hands off me, she screamed, shoving me with a force that sent me stumbling backward. I barely caught my balance, but before I could react, she was right in my face, her own fury unleashed. You want the truth, Tom? You want to know why I did it? Fine. You've always been a miserable failure. I'm sick of pretending like I don't hate every second of our pathetic life together. My heart pounded in my chest as her words pierced through me. What the hell are you talking about? I shot back, but my voice was weak now, my anger mixed with confusion. Her face twisted with rage, and she pointed a trembling finger at me. You, she spat. You and your miserable excuses. You can't even give me the basic things a woman needs. You're a joke to me. A sad, pathetic joke. I stared at her, my mind racing. What are you even talking about? She threw her hands up, laughing bitterly. I'm talking about your small dick, Tom. That's right. I said it. You've always known it, haven't you? Every time we had sex, you knew I wasn't satisfied. I faked it every single time. I faked every moan, every gasp, just to get it over with. I was never going to tell you, but now, what's the point? Her words hit me like a sledgehammer, leaving me stunned. My worst fear, my deepest insecurity, laid bare, thrown at me like an insult. You can't say that, I stammered, feeling the weight of shame and anger collide. But she wasn't done. And it's not just that, Tom, she continued, her voice sharp, each word cutting into me. It's everything about you. You're pathetic. You don't make enough money, we're always broke, living in this dump while other people are out there living their best lives. You're a nerd, obsessed with your stupid hobbies, always trying to make ends meet with your loser job. You've never given me the life I wanted, the life I deserve. I stood there, frozen, as the full force of her contempt washed over me. It was like I was seeing her for the first time, the real Jess, the one who had been hiding behind the smiles, the fake affection, the lies. You're poor, Tom, she sneered. You can't even give me basic comfort. Every day I have to struggle, deal with bills, stretch pennies, while other women are out there enjoying themselves with real men. Men who can provide. Men who don't embarrass their wives with their pathetic income and pathetic everything. My hands clenched into fists, but I didn't move. Her words were landing blow after blow, and I couldn't do anything to stop it. You're nothing, she spat, stepping closer, her eyes filled with a venom I hadn't known existed in her. You're a loser, a weak, sad little man. And I can't live like this anymore. I'm done pretending. I'm done lying to you. Something inside me snapped. My vision blurred as rage surged through me like a tidal wave. Before I even realized what I was doing, I grabbed the nearest object, a lamp, and hurled it across the room, sending it crashing into the wall. The sound of shattering glass echoed through the house. Jess didn't flinch. She stood there, defiant, staring at me with cold, angry eyes. What? You're going to hit me now? She challenged, her voice dripping with disdain. Go ahead. Show me how much of a man you really are. Or are you too much of a coward to even do that? I wanted to hit her. God help me, I wanted to. But I couldn't. I stood there, trembling, my fists clenched at my sides, trying to control the burning rage inside me. You ruined everything, I whispered, my voice shaking. You destroyed us. She scoffed. We were already destroyed, Tom. You just didn't see it. You were too busy pretending everything was fine, thinking that I could be happy with this life. But I can't. I won't. Tears welled up in my eyes, but I refused to let them fall. You never loved me, did you? She paused for a moment, her face softening, but then her expression hardened again. I loved you once, but that was before I realized who you really are. You're not the man I thought you were. Those words hit harder than anything she had said before. That's what I was to her. Without another word, I turned and stormed out of the house, the sound of my heart pounding in my ears. I couldn't breathe, couldn't think. Everything I'd known, everything I'd believed, had crumbled in a matter of minutes. I had to get out. Away from her, from the house, from the wreckage of my life. I stumbled into the darkness, feeling the cool night air hit my face. But no matter how far I walked, no matter how much distance I put between us, the truth stayed with me, haunting me. She didn't just cheat because of him. She cheated because of me. Because I wasn't enough. Because I never could be. And now, I had to figure out what the hell I was going to do next. I went to the hotel. The door of the hotel room slammed shut behind me as I dropped my bags on the floor, feeling the weight of everything sink deep into my bones. The cheap room wasn't much, but it was clean, quiet, and most importantly, far away from Jess. I couldn't stay in the house anymore, not after everything she had said. I sat down on the edge of the bed, my mind racing. The images of our fight, her cruel words, and those videos played on an endless loop in my head. I was in a rage, my anger spiraling out of control. She had ripped everything apart. Our marriage, my self-worth, my confidence, it was all gone. But as I sat there, staring blankly at the ugly wallpaper, something darker stirred inside me. I wanted revenge. She had hurt me in ways I didn't think were possible, and I wasn't going to let her walk away from this unscathed. I had been a good husband, loyal, hardworking, even if I wasn't perfect. But now I realized that none of it had mattered to her. She had humiliated me, torn me apart, and I couldn't let it slide. I grabbed my phone and started digging. I remembered the flash drive, those sick videos she had kept. Jess had been reckless, leaving proof of her infidelity right there in our home, thinking I'd never find it. That same arrogance would be her downfall. I knew exactly what to do. I spent the next few hours copying the videos onto my laptop and saving them onto a secure drive. I made sure to back everything up, cataloging every moment of her betrayal. Then I crafted an email, anonymous, untraceable, and sent the videos to her closest friends, family, and even her colleagues. They deserved to know the truth about the woman Jess had become. It felt dirty, but at the same time, it gave me a sense of power that I hadn't felt in days. The same shame and humiliation she had forced on me would now come crashing down on her. I didn't care about the fallout. I just wanted her to feel the pain I had been forced to live with. When it was done, I sat back in the hotel room, breathing heavily. The silence of the room only made the weight of everything feel heavier. My phone buzzed on the nightstand. I looked at the screen and saw Jess's name. Of course, she'd try to call me after what I did. The messages were coming in fast now, texts from her, her family, her friends, all filled with confusion and anger. I ignored them. But then, a single text from Jess appeared that made my blood freeze. "I'm pregnant." For a second, I couldn't breathe. Pregnant? Was this some kind of sick joke? I stared at the words, my mind struggling to process what she had just said. Another message followed immediately after. "It's not yours. It's his." I dropped the phone, my body trembling with a mixture of rage and disbelief. She had just thrown another grenade at me, shattering what little was left of my world. Not only had she cheated on me, but now she was pregnant with another man's child. I stood up, pacing the small room, my fists clenched tightly at my sides. How could she do this? How could she destroy everything, rip our lives apart, and then come back with this? Another call from Jess lit up my phone, but this time, I answered. "What do you want, Jess?" I hissed into the phone, barely able to contain my anger. She was crying on the other end, her voice shaky and panicked. "Tom, please, I didn't mean to. I didn't want to tell you this way, but it's true. I'm pregnant, and it's his. I don't know what to do." Her words were like gasoline on a fire. "You don't know what to do?" I snapped, my voice rising. "You should have thought about that before you screwed him." "Please," she sobbed. "I know I've made mistakes, but I'm pregnant, and I need your help. I can't do this alone." I let out a bitter laugh. "Oh, now you need me? Now you want my help? After everything you said? After you destroyed everything?" There was silence on the other end, and I could hear her trying to catch her breath through the tears. "I'm sorry," she whispered. "I'm so sorry, Tom. I never wanted this to happen. I didn't want to hurt you like this. But I'm pregnant, and I don't know what to do." I shook my head, my mind racing. Pregnant? With his child? The words didn't even seem real. I had to get away from her, from this nightmare. "I can't deal with this right now, Jess," I said coldly. "I'm done." The next day, my wife called me again. "No, please don't hang up," she begged. "Tom, I need you to listen. I went to the doctor yesterday, and they told me that the baby, It's not his. My breath caught in my throat. What? Her voice was softer now, filled with guilt. I thought it was his, but it's not. I was wrong. The baby is yours, Tom. For a moment I was speechless. It was like the world had shifted beneath me, everything upside down and out of place. Mine. I repeated, my voice barely above a whisper. Yes, she said, her voice trembling. The baby is yours. I couldn't process what she was saying. After everything she'd done, now she was telling me that this baby was mine? The baby she had just told me belonged to her lover? You're lying, I muttered, my voice shaking with disbelief. You're just trying to pull me back into your mess. No, Tom, I swear. I didn't know. I thought it was his because of the timing, but the doctor confirmed it. It's yours. My heart pounded in my chest. This had to be some kind of trick, some desperate attempt to win me back. But the truth in her voice cut deep. Was it possible? Could she have been wrong? My hand gripped the phone tightly as I closed my eyes, feeling a mix of anger, confusion, and something else I couldn't quite identify. Tom, she pleaded, I know I don't deserve it, but I need you. We're going to have a baby. Please, we can try to fix this. I know I messed up, but I'm still your wife, and this baby. I cut her off. You're pathetic, Jess, I said, my voice void of emotion. You said it yourself, it's his. You made your choice. And I'm making mine. With that, I hung up, her sobs cut off as I ended the call. The silence that followed was deafening, but in that moment, I felt nothing. Not anger, not pain, just numbness. I blocked her number. She was out of my life for good now. It didn't matter what she said or what she did next. I was done. Whatever happened with that baby, with her life, was no longer my concern. I was free. Or at least, that's what I told myself. The days after I blocked Jess were a blur. I stayed at the hotel, trying to pick up the pieces of what was left of my life. I told myself I didn't care anymore, that whatever happened to her, to the baby, wasn't my concern. But deep down, the weight of it all still gnawed at me. My mind kept going back to those words, the ones she'd said right before I hung up. The baby is yours. I wanted to believe it was just another lie. Something she'd thrown out there to pull me back, to manipulate me into staying. But it haunted me, the thought that maybe, just maybe, she had been telling the truth. What if the baby really was mine? What then? I tried to bury those thoughts. I threw myself into work, into anything that would distract me. But every night as I lay in that cold hotel bed, alone, the silence would creep back in. The what-ifs would fill my mind until I couldn't escape them. A week passed before I heard from anyone connected to Jess. I had kept her blocked, refusing to look at any messages, calls, or emails. I wasn't going to let her back into my life. But on a quiet Thursday afternoon, just as I was heading back to the hotel, I got an unexpected call from an unknown number. At first, I ignored it, assuming it was another attempt by Jess or someone close to her. But the call came again, and something inside me told me to pick up. Hello. I answered, my voice strained. Tom. The voice on the other end was soft, unfamiliar. This is Dr. Lucas from the Eastside Medical Clinic. I'm your wife's doctor. I'm sorry to call you like this, but I thought you should know, there's something important we need to discuss. I froze, my heart skipping a beat. What? Why are you calling me? We're not together anymore. There was a pause on the other end, and then the doctor's voice softened. I understand, but this is regarding the pregnancy. I don't know how much Jess has told you, but there's something you need to know. My stomach twisted. What is it? Your wife came in for an ultrasound last week, Dr. Lucas continued. We did a follow-up, and, well, the initial assumption was incorrect. Jess told you the baby was yours, and she was right. There's no doubt now. The paternity test confirms it. I felt the air leave my lungs. It wasn't just a guess anymore, it was a fact. The baby was mine. I was silent, unable to form any words. The doctor's voice seemed distant, like I was hearing it from underwater. Tom, I know this is a lot to take in, but Jess has been going through some complications with the pregnancy. She's under a lot of stress, and it's affecting her health. We're keeping a close eye on her, but I thought you should know. For both of your sakes. Complications? Stress? Suddenly, The anger I'd held onto so tightly started to fade, replaced by a wave of guilt I hadn't expected. Despite everything she had done, she was still the woman I had loved for years. And now, she was carrying my child. I swallowed hard. Is she okay? We're doing everything we can, the doctor assured me. But Jess has been asking for you. She's been very emotional, and the stress isn't helping her or the baby. I know this is difficult, but maybe you should consider talking to her. I hung up the phone without another word, my mind spinning. Jess had complications? She was asking for me? After everything that had happened, why now? Why would she want to see me? I didn't want to care. I wanted to stay angry, to keep the walls I'd built between us. But the more I thought about it, the more I realized that no matter how much I hated her for what she'd done, the baby was still mine. I couldn't just walk away from that. Hours passed before I finally made the decision to go to the hospital. I didn't tell anyone, didn't prepare myself mentally for what I might face. I just drove, letting the silence of the car fill the space where my thoughts used to race. When I arrived at the clinic, I was directed to Jess's room. The walk down the hallway felt surreal, like I was moving through a dream. I wasn't sure what I was going to say, or even if I wanted to say anything at all. But when I pushed open the door and saw her lying there, pale and exhausted, my heart dropped. She looked up at me, her eyes red from crying, her face a mix of relief and sorrow. "Tom," she whispered, her voice weak. I stood there, frozen, my hands clenched into fists. This was the woman who had betrayed me, who had ripped our life apart. But now she looked so vulnerable, so fragile, that the anger I had held onto for so long started to slip away. "I didn't think you'd come," she said softly, her eyes filling with tears. I didn't know how to respond. I wanted to yell, to scream at her for everything she had put me through. But I couldn't. Not like this. "What do you want, Jess?" I asked, my voice hollow. She wiped at her tears, her hand shaking. "I know I've hurt you. I know I've ruined everything. But I need you to. I can't do this alone." I stayed silent, my eyes locked on hers. "You said the baby wasn't mine." She winced, her tears flowing more freely now. "I was wrong. I thought it was his because of the timing. I thought I'd lost you, that I'd lost everything. But it's yours, Tom. The baby is ours." Hearing those words again should have brought me relief, but instead, all I felt was a deep, hollow emptiness. How could I trust her? How could I ever believe anything she said after what she'd done? I stared at her for a long moment, trying to process everything, but no answers came. "I don't know if I can forgive you," I said quietly. Jess reached for my hand, her fingers trembling. "I don't expect you to forgive me. But please, don't walk away from this. Don't walk away from our baby." For the first time in days, I felt the weight of the situation settle on my chest. It wasn't just about me anymore. It wasn't just about her betrayal. There was a child involved now, our child. I wanted to hate her. I wanted to walk away and never look back. But I couldn't. Not with everything hanging in the balance. "I don't know what the future looks like, Jess," I said slowly, pulling my hand away from hers. "But I'm not ready to talk about it right now." Her face crumpled, the tears falling faster. "Please, Tom." But I couldn't hear her anymore. I turned and walked out of the room, the sound of her sobs echoing in the hallway behind me. I didn't know what was going to happen next, but I knew one thing for certain. I wasn't the same man who had walked into that hospital. Something had shifted inside me, something unexpected. And nothing was ever going to be the same again. The days after I left the hospital were some of the most surreal of my life. I tried to carry on as if nothing had happened, burying myself in work, pretending like Jess and her lies weren't constantly gnawing at the back of my mind. But no matter how hard I tried, I couldn't escape the reality of it all. The baby, the betrayal, the mess that my life had become. The nights were the hardest. Every time I closed my eyes, I'd see her face, the way she had looked at me, pleading, desperate, and I'd hear her words again, that confession that I still couldn't shake. "The baby is yours." It haunted me, leaving me restless and angry. I thought about going back, about confronting her one last time, but what was the point? She had already broken everything. There was no fixing what she had done, no going back to the way things were before. I wasn't sure what I expected to happen next. Part of me hoped that Jess would just disappear from my life, that she'd take the baby and leave me alone. But that wasn't how things worked, was it? Reality doesn't just let you walk away from your responsibilities, no matter how much you want to. A few days later, she called again. This time, I answered. I wasn't sure why. Maybe I needed closure, maybe I was just tired of running. Either way, when her name popped up on my phone, I knew I couldn't ignore it any longer. Tom, she said, her voice soft, almost fragile. Can we talk? I clenched my jaw, feeling the familiar wave of anger rise in my chest. Talk? What's left to talk about, Jess? Please, she whispered. I need to see you. It's important. I wanted to hang up. I wanted to tell her to leave me the hell alone. But something in her voice, that quiet desperation, made me pause. Against my better judgment, I agreed to meet her one last time. We met at a small cafe on the outskirts of town, a place far enough from any familiar faces. I didn't want anyone to see us together, didn't want to deal with the questions or the pitying looks. When I arrived, Jess was already there, sitting at a corner table, her hands wrapped around a cup of coffee. She looked tired, worn down, like the weight of everything was finally starting to take its toll. I sat down across from her, keeping my distance, arms crossed over my chest. I didn't say anything at first, just waited for her to speak. She looked up at me, her eyes red from crying. Thank you for coming, she said quietly. I nodded, but I didn't respond. I wasn't here for pleasantries. Jess took a deep breath, her hands trembling slightly as she placed them on the table. I know I've hurt you, Tom. More than I can ever make up for. And I know there's no excuse for what I did. But I'm still carrying your baby, and I need your help. Her words cut through the air like a knife. She was asking for my help, after everything she had done? After she had ripped our lives apart? I stared at her, the anger bubbling up inside me. You've got some nerve, I muttered, my voice low but sharp. You don't need me, Jess. You've got him. Lover. Why isn't he here with you now? Why isn't he the one dealing with this? Jess flinched, her face paling. I haven't spoken to him since the hospital. I scoffed, shaking my head in disbelief. So, that's it? He knocks you up, and then he disappears? Is that what you traded our life for? She looked down at her hands, her voice barely above a whisper. It wasn't like that, Tom. I cut her off, my voice rising. Don't lie to me, Jess. You made your choice. You wanted him. His money, his body, his whatever else you thought I couldn't give you. So, go back to him. Why isn't he with you now, huh? Where's your Negro now, Jess? Her face flushed with a mixture of shame and anger, but she didn't respond. She couldn't. There was nothing left for her to say. I leaned back in my chair, feeling the weight of everything pressing down on me. You wanted him so badly, Jess. You wanted a life that I couldn't give you. Well, congratulations. You've got it now. But don't come to me for help. I'll pay you alimony. I'll take care of the kid because that's the kind of man I am. But I don't want to see you. I don't want to live with you. After everything you've done, after everything you've said, I'm done. Her eyes filled with tears again, but I didn't care. I couldn't care. Not anymore. I'm sorry, she whispered, her voice trembling. I didn't mean for it to turn out like this. I didn't want to lose you. I stood up, my hands shaking as I grabbed my coat. You lost me the second you decided I wasn't enough for you. Without another word, I turned and walked out of the cafe, leaving her behind for good. As I stepped out into the cold afternoon air, I felt a strange sense of relief. It was over. Really over. There was no going back, no more trying to piece together what had been shattered. Jess had made her choice, and now, so had I. For the first time in weeks, I felt free.